A Korean mafia boss found a homeless black woman with a child on his doorstep. When the DNA test came back, it didn't just shock the clan, it ignited a war that would change the criminal underworld forever. The blood on Téju's hands had dried hours ago, but the decision he was about to make would stain his soul in ways no execution ever could. Seoul's most feared crime lord, a man who'd built an empire on calculated violence and unshakable control, was about to break every rule he'd ever lived by. For a stranger he didn't know and a child he couldn't remember. In the span of one night, the woman collapsed on his doorstep would expose secrets buried for decades, force him to choose between the empire he commanded and the family he'd abandoned, and prove that some bloodlines run deeper than loyalty, stronger than tradition, and deadlier than any rival gang could ever be. What Téju didn't know was that saving this woman and child wouldn't just cost him everything. It would reveal that the real enemy had been inside his clan all along, and the conspiracy that destroyed her life was the same one that would either crown him or kill him. Before we start the story, comment below and let us know where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The traitor's blood had sprayed across Téju's Armani suit in an almost artistic pattern, dark crimson against winter white silk. He hadn't flinched when the blade opened the man's throat, hadn't blinked when the body collapsed at his feet in the clan's execution chamber. The Baekdu clan had protocols, and betrayal had only one sentence. Téju had delivered judgment with the same cold precision his father had taught him, his face an emotionless mask as the life drained from a man who'd once called him brother. "Clean this up," he'd said, voice flat as winter steel, already walking away before the corpse stopped twitching. At 32, Téju had perfected the art of killing without feeling. His traditional dragon tattoos, intricate black ink that crawled up his neck and disappeared beneath his collar, marked every territory he'd conquered, every rival he'd crushed. The youngest heir in Baekdu history, he'd earned his position not through birthright alone, but through a ruthlessness that made even his own clan members fear him. The drive back to his estate took 40 minutes through mountain roads, designed to hide his fortress from the world below. Seoul glittered in the valley like scattered diamonds, a city that bowed to his invisible hand. Téju watched it pass through tinted windows, his face still blank, his mind already calculating tomorrow's moves. Power was a game of chess, and he always played 10 steps ahead. His driver pulled through the compound's reinforced gates, 12-foot walls topped with surveillance cameras and armed guards at every checkpoint. The estate itself was a masterpiece of intimidation. All sharp angles and cold marble, more fortress than home, designed to remind visitors that Téju was untouchable. He lived alone by choice. Trust was a weakness he couldn't afford. But as the car rounded the final curve to the main entrance, Téju's calculating mind stuttered to a halt. There, collapsed on the pristine white marble steps that led to his front door, was a woman. A black woman, filthy, barely conscious, her clothes little more than rags. And in her arms, clutched with desperate strength even in her semi-conscious state, was a child. A small girl, no more than 2 years old, with a mass of curly black hair and skin the color of honey kissed by sunlight. The contrast was obscene. His immaculate white marble, imported Italian stone that cost more than most people earned in a year, stained by the dirt and desperation of the homeless. His fortress, the one place in Seoul where nothing happened without his permission, violated by this impossible intrusion. "Sir," his driver's voice was tight with alarm. "Should I call security to remove them?" Téju didn't answer immediately. His guards were already converging, weapons drawn, shouting in Korean for the woman to identify herself. She didn't move, couldn't move. The child in her arms began to cry, a weak, pitiful sound that spoke of days without food. And something in that sound pierced through Téju's armor like nothing had in years. He stepped out of the car before he could question the impulse. His shoes, Italian leather that cost more than the trader's life had been worth, touched down on the marble drive with a quiet click. The guards froze at his appearance, uncertain. No one approached Téju without permission, and Téju certainly never approached random homeless women. But his feet carried him forward anyway, some instinct older than logic pulling him toward the collapsed figure. As he drew closer, details resolved. The woman was young, late 20s perhaps, and would have been beautiful if not for the obvious signs of prolonged suffering. Her dark skin was marked with old scars, her curly hair was matted with dirt, and her clothes hung off a frame that had clearly known starvation. But her hands, even unconscious, gripped the child with a mother's unshakable protection. The little girl looked up at him with wide, terrified eyes. Golden brown skin, curly black hair, features that were distinctly mixed, Asian and African, a bridge between worlds. She was malnourished, her cheeks hollow, her arms too thin. But those eyes, Téju's breath caught. Those eyes were his. The exact shade, the exact shape, looking up at him from a face he'd never seen before. Sir. Han Ji-wook appeared at his elbow, his oldest friend, his most trusted advisor, a man who'd stood beside him through a dozen wars. What are your orders? Téju couldn't speak, couldn't think, because the child's eyes weren't the only thing familiar. As the woman stirred, her head lolling to one side, he saw her face fully for the first time, and memory exploded through his mind like a grenade. Johannesburg, 3 years ago, an art gallery where he'd gone to meet an arms dealer. A beautiful woman admiring an African painting, speaking with passion about the intersection of Korean and African artistic traditions. Her laugh, the way her eyes lit up when he'd approached. 2 weeks of stolen moments in a foreign city, the only time in his adult life when he'd been Téju instead of the Baekdu heir. And then the emergency call, his father's assassination attempt, requiring his immediate return. He'd left without explanation, without even saying goodbye, because attachment was weakness and weakness was death in his world. He'd never looked back, had forced himself to forget. But he remembered now, every moment, every touch, every promise he'd implicitly broken by disappearing. They said you were my only hope. The woman's voice was barely a whisper, in broken Korean that twisted the words almost beyond recognition. Her eyes fluttered open, dark, haunted, desperate. Please, my daughter, she's hungry. Daughter. The word hit him like a physical blow. His guards had their weapons trained on her now. Sir, she's trespassing. Should we remove her from the property? Han Ji-wook stepped forward, his scarred face unreadable. Téju, this breaks protocol. We don't know who she is, where she came from, what she wants. She could be a trap, an enemy plant. This could be. No. Téju's voice came out rougher than he'd intended. His eyes were locked on the child, on those impossible, familiar eyes. Bring them inside. Sir. The guard commander's shock was palpable. Inside the main house? But security protocols. Did I stutter? Téju's gaze finally lifted from the child, and the temperature around them seemed to drop 10 degrees. This was the voice that had ordered a man's execution 3 hours ago. Bring them inside. Get the medical team. And if anyone speaks of this outside this compound, they'll join tonight's traitor. The guard scrambled to obey. Han Ji-wook moved closer, voice low. Téju, what are you doing? You don't know these people. This woman could be anyone. That child. I know. Téju's jaw was tight. That's why we're bringing them in. Call Dr. Shin. Full medical workup. And Ji-wook. He turned to face his friend fully. Prepare for a DNA test. Discreetly. Understanding dawned in Han Ji-wook's eyes, followed quickly by alarm. You think. I don't think anything yet. But Téju's gaze drifted back to the child as guards carefully lifted the unconscious woman. But I need to know. As they carried the woman past him, she stirred again. Her hand shot out with surprising strength, gripping his blood-stained sleeve. Her eyes opened fully for just a moment, lucid and piercing. Your daughter is hungry, she said in English this time, her voice stronger. What kind of father lets his child starve? Then her eyes rolled back and she went limp again. Téju stood frozen on his marble steps, his expensive suit still stained with the traitor's blood, while guards carried a homeless stranger and a child who might be his daughter into his fortress. Around him, his men exchanged nervous glances. The Baekdu heir never broke protocol, never showed weakness, never let outsiders pass the gates. But something fundamental had just shifted in Yom Téju's calculated world. Because if that child was his, everything changed. The succession, the clan, the empire he'd built on ruthless control, All of it suddenly rested on the DNA of a mixed-race toddler he'd never known existed. And if she wasn't his, then someone had just orchestrated the most elaborate trap in Baekdu history, using a face from his past and a child with his eyes to penetrate defenses no enemy had ever breached. Either way, whoever this woman was, whatever she wanted, the blood on Téju's hands tonight wouldn't be the last. The question was whose blood would spill next, his enemies, his family's, or his own. Inside the estate, as medical staff rushed to treat the woman and child, Téju stood in his pristine entryway and watched his carefully controlled world begin to crack. In his pocket, his phone buzzed with messages from clan elders, already demanding to know why the heir had brought outsiders into the compound. But Téju didn't answer. He was remembering a woman's laugh in Johannesburg, a child's golden brown eyes, and the impossible question that would either crown him or destroy him. What kind of father lets his child starve? The kind who didn't know she existed. The kind who abandoned her mother without a word. The kind who chose power over everything else. But maybe, just maybe, not the kind he had to remain. The medical suite on the third floor of Téju's estate was equipped better than most hospitals, a necessity when your business involved frequent injuries that couldn't be explained to legitimate doctors. Through the one-way glass, Téju watched as Dr. Shin worked on the unconscious woman and child. IVs dripped life back into their dehydrated bodies. The little girl, Amara, the woman had called her, lay so still on the examination table that fear flickered through Téju's chest before he saw her breathing. She's a ghost. Han Ji-wook appeared beside him, tablet in hand, his scarred face grave. I ran her through every database we have access to, international, domestic, criminal, civilian. Nothing. No records, no identity, no digital footprint. It's like she's been deliberately erased. Or she's running from something, Téju murmured, his eyes fixed on the woman's face. In sleep, cleaned of the worst dirt by the medical staff, her beauty was undeniable and achingly familiar. DNA test? Ji-wook asked quietly. Immediately. I need to know. The door behind them burst open with enough force to crack against the wall. Téju didn't flinch. He knew that particular brand of fury. Matriarch Yom Hygiene swept into the observation room like a winter storm given human form. 75 years old, dressed in traditional hanbok, despite the late hour, his grandmother radiated the kind of power that came from 4 decades of ruling the Baekdu clan's internal politics with an iron fist. Her eyes, dark and sharp as obsidian blades, fixed on him with absolute wrath. You brought filth into our ancestral home. Her voice could have cut glass. Have you lost your mind? Grandmother. Téju's tone remained level. I had no choice. No choice. She moved closer, her small frame somehow filling the entire room with presence. You are the Baekdu heir. Everything is your choice. And you chose to violate every protocol, every tradition, to shelter. Her gaze swept to the window, landing on Ife and Amara with visible disgust. That. If the child is mine, she's clan. Téju finally turned to face his grandmother fully. Blood is blood. The matriarch's eyes narrowed. That mixed thing will never be Yom blood. Not in my clan. Not while I breathe. Then perhaps you should stop breathing. The words came out colder than he'd intended, but Téju didn't take them back. Because I've already ordered the DNA test. And if she's mine, she stays. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. For a long moment, grandmother and grandson stared at each other, 2 apex predators recognizing that the hierarchy had just shifted. You'll regret this, the matriarch said softly, when she destroys everything we've built. She swept out, her fury leaving ice in its wake. Téju was still standing at the window when his cousin arrived an hour later. Yom Sang-woo looked like he'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Tailored Italian suit, perfect hair, a smile that charmed everyone it touched. But Téju had known him since childhood. That smile never reached his eyes. Heard you brought home a stray, Sang-woo said lightly, joining him at the glass. His gaze landed on Ife and lingered. Beautiful, actually, for someone who looks like she's been living in a dumpster. Careful. Convenient timing, though, don't you think? Sang-woo's tone was casual, but Téju heard the calculation underneath. Homeless woman with a mixed child shows up on your doorstep? Gold digger must have found your address in a phone book. Get out, Sang-woo. Just saying, rich target, sob story, cute kid. Classic con. But Sang-woo was already moving toward the door, having planted his poison. Hope you know what you're doing, cousin. When Ife finally woke, 12 hours later, Téju was sitting beside her bed. Her eyes snapped open, immediately searching, and relaxing only when she saw Amara sleeping peacefully in the adjacent crib, clean and fed and safe. What do you want? Téju asked without preamble. Ife's gaze shifted to him, wary but not weak. Safety. For my daughter. How did you find me? She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, your name was in my father's papers. Yom Téju. Baek du clan. Seoul. Her English was clear, educated. Nothing like the desperate woman who'd collapsed on his steps. I had to try. I had nowhere else to go. And 3 years ago, Johannesburg. Recognition flickered in her eyes. You remember. He did. More than he wanted to admit. The art gallery where he'd gone to meet an arms dealer. The woman admiring a painting of the Rift Valley, speaking with passion about how Korean landscape techniques could capture African light. He'd been charmed despite himself. 2 weeks of stolen moments in a foreign city, conversations about art and history, walks through markets, one night where he'd forgotten who he was supposed to be. Then the call had come. His father's assassination attempt. He'd disappeared without explanation, without even saying goodbye, because that was what heirs to criminal empires did. They didn't have romantic entanglements. They didn't leave vulnerabilities their enemies could exploit. I thought I'd never see you again, Ife said softly. You left no number, no name beyond Téju, no way to contact you. I only knew your first name. You never told me you were pregnant. I didn't know until after you were gone. And by then, she looked at Amara. I had bigger problems. Dr. Shin interrupted before Téju could press further. Sir, we need a DNA sample from the child. For the paternity test. The next 48 hours moved like cold honey. The matriarch called an emergency clan meeting, demanding Téju justify his actions. Sang-woo circulated through the compound, all sympathetic smiles while quietly undermining his cousin's decision to every lieutenant who would listen. And Ife, recovering her strength, regaining her dignity, watched everything with those intelligent, haunted eyes that saw far too much. Téju found himself drawn to the medical suite more than he wanted to admit. Watching Amara play with blocks Jiwook had found somewhere. Listening to Ife sing to her daughter in a language he didn't recognize, Zulu, she said, her father's tongue. Trying to reconcile the desperate woman on his doorstep with the educated, articulate mother who emerged as her strength returned. On the second night, as he stood at his office window staring out at the compound lights, Jiwook entered without knocking. The envelope in his hand was thin, official, absolutely final. Results came back. Jiwook's voice was carefully neutral. Téju took the envelope, his hand steady despite the earthquake happening inside his chest. He opened it. Read the single line that mattered. Probability of paternity, 99.97%. The world tilted. He looked up through his office window, across the compound to where the medical suite lights still burned. Through the glass, through all the glass and distance and walls he'd built, he could see into Amara's room. She was sitting up in her crib, messily eating rice that Ife was feeding her. Clean, safe, no longer starving. And as if she felt his gaze across all that distance, the little girl turned and looked directly at him. And smiled. It was his smile. The exact curve of his lips. The way it started in the eyes before touching the mouth. The smile his mother used to say could charm anyone, or terrify them depending on what he wanted. On a 2-year-old's face, it was pure joy. His daughter. His blood. His child who'd spent 2 years homeless because he'd walked away from her mother without a backward glance. Sir. Jiwook's voice seemed to come from very far away. What do you want me to do? Téju stared at that smile, at his daughter's face, and felt something crack inside his carefully constructed armor. He'd built an empire on ruthless control. He'd killed men without hesitation. He'd sacrificed everything human in himself to become the perfect Baekdu heir. and he'd let his own child starve on the streets of foreign cities. Call another clan meeting, he said quietly. Tell them I'm making an announcement. What kind of announcement? Téju looked down at the DNA results in his hand. 99.97%. Not absolute certainty, but close enough for government work. Close enough to change everything. The kind that starts wars. Because his grandmother had been right about one thing. Bringing Ife and Amara into the compound would destroy everything they built. The question was whether something better could rise from the ashes, or whether this moment of weakness would be the crack his enemies needed to bring down the Baekdu Empire entirely. Either way, the girl with his smile was his daughter, and that changed everything. The ancestral hall had witnessed 4 generations of Baekdu clan decisions, marriages, executions, territorial expansions, declarations of war. Its walls were dark wood imported from ancient Korean forests, its floor polished stone that had drunk the blood of traitors. Tonight, it was packed with every senior member, lieutenant, and extended family member who mattered, all summoned by emergency order from the heir himself. Téju stood at the head of the long table, the DNA results in his hand, and dropped the bomb that would fracture his world. This child is my daughter. Her name is Amara. She is clan. The explosion was immediate. Voices erupted in protest, outrage, disbelief, fury mixing into a cacophony of rejection. Elder Kim slammed his fist on the table. Foreign blood? Illegitimate? This is an abomination. Against every tradition we've upheld for 2 centuries, Elder Park added, his face red with anger. Sang-woo rose smoothly, his expression perfectly calibrated to show concerned respect. Cousin, we understand you've been surprised by this revelation, but accepting this threatens everything the Baekdu clan represents. Our legacy is blood. Téju cut him off. And she is my blood. The DNA confirms it. 99.97% probability of paternity. The matriarch stood, her presence silencing the room like a blade through throats. Pay the woman whatever she wants. Send them away. This ends now. No. Téju. His grandmother's voice could have frozen oceans. You will not destroy this clan for a moment of weakness 3 years ago. She is my daughter. She stays. Elder Kim called for a vote. The result was predictable, overwhelming opposition. Only Han Ji-wook and 2 younger lieutenants abstained. The rest voted to reject Amara as a clan member, to pay off Ife and remove them from the compound within 24 hours. Téju waited until the votes were counted. Then he smiled, the smile that made grown men fear him. I'm not asking permission. I'm informing you. You can't, Elder Park began. I'm the heir. I have final authority on clan membership. That's clan law. Or would you like to challenge that authority directly? His gaze swept the room, landing on each elder in turn. Anyone? Silence. But it was the silence of coiled snakes, not submission. Sang-woo's voice was silk over steel. The council can challenge your position as heir if you prove unstable, if you prioritize personal matters over clan welfare. His smile was sympathetic, poisonous. Just saying, cousin. Reconsider. For everyone's sake. Ife watched from the doorway, understanding dawning in her eyes. She'd brought a nuclear bomb into a powder keg. Later, in his private study, she found him staring at the city lights. We'll leave. I just needed confirmation that she was yours. Now I know. We don't need anything else. You're not going anywhere. Téju, she used his name for the first time. She'll get us both killed. This is your world, not mine. I don't belong here. She's my daughter. He turned to face her fully. That makes her belong. Does it? Ife's eyes flashed. Or does it just make her a target? She moved closer, her voice dropping. You want the truth? Fine. After Johannesburg, I tried to find you. Spent months searching. Nothing. Had Amara alone in a clinic where they didn't ask questions. Struggled to survive doing whatever work I could find. Ife. My apartment burned down 6 months after she was born. Electrical fire, they said. But I knew. Someone was cleaning up loose ends. So I ran. Kept moving. Cape Town, Lagos, Istanbul, Bangkok. Every city, every country. Always looking over my shoulder. always feeling like something was following us. Téju's jaw tightened. Following you? I found your name in my father's old documents. Yom Téju. Fake du clan. Soul. I tracked you here, watched your compound for weeks, trying to find the courage to approach. Then Amara got sick. We had no food, no money, no options left. So her voice broke. I collapsed on your doorstep because I was out of choices. I didn't know. The words felt inadequate. If I had known, would you have cared? She stepped closer, challenging him. Or would you have done exactly what your family wants? Paid me off and forgotten we exist? Téju opened his mouth, closed it, because he didn't know the answer. The door opened. Amara toddled in, having escaped from the medical suite staff. His eyes, found him immediately. She walked over with the determined waddle of a 2-year-old and touched his hand. Appa, the Korean word for father, taught by someone during her recovery. Appa. Something broke in Téju's chest. He knelt, bringing himself to her level. Amara smiled, his smile, and held up her arms, the universal gesture of a child wanting to be held. He picked her up. She was so light, so small. Her curly hair tickled his neck as she settled against his shoulder. Within minutes, exhausted from her escape attempt, she was asleep. Téju stood there, holding his daughter for the first time, feeling her tiny heartbeat against his chest. He looked at Ife, raw confusion on his face. I don't know how to be a father. Ife's expression softened, just slightly. Neither did my father at first. But he learned, and he was the best man I ever knew. Who was your father? She hesitated. Then later, when we're not about to be thrown out of your fortress. But they never got that conversation. Because at 2 a.m., Téju found himself wandering the compound, unable to sleep. His mind circled the same thoughts, his daughter, his clan, the impossible choice between them. He found Ife outside Amara's room, standing guard. She hadn't slept either. You should rest, he said quietly. Can't. Something feels wrong. Wrong how? I don't know. Just wrong. Then the world exploded. The explosion came from the east wall, a massive blast that lit up the night and shook the compound's foundations. Alarms shrieked. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Professional, coordinated. Through the smoke, Téju saw figures in tactical gear breaching the compound perimeter. Amara. Ife screamed, lunging for the door. Stay behind me. Téju pulled his gun, moving to shield them both. But Ife was already inside, scooping up their crying daughter. When she emerged, there was a knife in her hand, not taken from a kitchen, but a tactical blade that had been hidden somewhere on her body. Their eyes met across the smoke and chaos. I've been protecting her alone for 2 years, Ife said, her voice steel over fear. I'm not useless. More gunfire. Closer now. The hit squad was inside the compound, and they were heading straight for the medical wing. Straight for Amara. Téju's blood turned to ice, because this wasn't random. This wasn't a rival gang testing defenses. This was surgical, targeted. Someone had known exactly where his daughter was sleeping. Someone inside the clan had just tried to kill his child. Téju moved like death-given form, 3 bullets, 3 bodies, surgical precision. He'd been trained for this since childhood. Where to shoot for maximum damage, how to turn any space into a killing field, how to protect what mattered while destroying everything else. The tactical team breaching his compound had made one critical mistake. They'd entered his territory. But what shocked him wasn't his own lethality. It was Ife's. She moved like water and lightning combined, ducking under a grab, driving her tactical knife up through a jaw, using the falling body as a shield against incoming fire. A second attacker rushed her while she held Amara. Ife shifted, redirected his momentum, and sent him crashing through a window. Her movements weren't desperate or lucky. They were trained, professional, deadly. This wasn't a homeless woman protecting her child. This was a soldier in a war she'd been fighting long before she reached his doorstep. Ife. Téju took down another attacker, creating a path. Move. She was already moving. Amara clutched against her chest with one arm while the other wielded that knife like an extension of her body. They converged in the hallway, back to back, his gun and her blade, their daughter between them, and held position as Han Ji-wook's security forces finally mobilized. The fight ended in 7 minutes. 3 attackers dead, 2 captured, 0 casualties among the Baekdu clan. But the message was crystal clear. Someone wanted Ife and Amara dead badly enough to assault a fortified Mafia compound. The interrogation room reeked of blood and fear. Téju stood over the surviving attacker, his knuckles split from the questions he'd asked with his fists. Who hired you? Inside source, the man gasped through broken teeth. Anonymous contact. Good money. Didn't ask questions. You're about to start asking. Téju's voice dropped to something sub-zero. Or I'll make sure you pray for the death I'm not giving you. But the man genuinely didn't know. Dead end. Which meant the traitor was still hidden within the clan. Back in his study, Téju rounded on Ife. Amara was finally asleep, traumatized but safe, in Ji-wook's wife's arms 3 floors down. Now it was time for truth. Stop lying. Who are you really? Ife met his gaze, and something in her expression shifted. The walls she'd maintained, the desperate mother act, crumbled. What replaced it was harder, older, forged in fires he was only beginning to understand. You want the truth? Fine. She crossed her arms. My father was Kwame Mbeki. Does that name mean anything to you? Téju's blood went cold. The South African diamond smuggler. He was assassinated 3 years ago, along with my mother, my 2 brothers, everyone he trusted. I survived because I wasn't home that night. I was in Johannesburg at an art gallery, meeting a Korean man I thought was just a businessman passing through. The pieces clicked together with horrifying precision. Your father partnered with international organizations, including the Baekdu clan. 20 years of business deals, diamond routes, money laundering, arms trading. Your father and mine were partners, Téju, which means our daughter isn't just your blood. She's a bridge between 2 criminal empires. That's impossible. My father never mentioned. Your father kept many secrets. Mine did too, until they both died. Ife's voice hardened. After the assassination, I ran. Been running for 3 years with your daughter, trying to figure out who killed my family and why. Then I found your name in my father's encrypted records. Yom Téju, Baekdu clan, Seoul, Johannesburg 3 years ago. You think my clan killed your father. I think someone did. And the timing is awfully convenient, don't you think? Your father dies in an accident 6 months after mine is massacred. Both men who ran a secret international partnership. Both men who knew too much about each other's operations. Han Ji-wook burst in, tablet glowing. She's telling the truth. I found encrypted files in the clan archives, your father's private server. Kwame Baekdu partnership, documented for 23 years. Diamond routes, financial flows, everything. His face was grim. But the files stop abruptly 3 years ago. Exactly when Kwame Mbeki was killed. Téju felt the ground shifting under his feet. You didn't just come here for protection. You came for answers. I came for both. Ife's eyes blazed. My father was murdered. I want to know why. And I think your clan knows. The words hung between them like live grenades. If I'd known who you were in Johannesburg, Téju began, would it have mattered? She stepped closer, challenging. I was still just a girl at an art gallery to you. One night of fun before you disappeared. No. His voice roughened. You were never just anything. The moment stretched, heated, complicated by 3 years of absence and one night of violence where they fought side by side like they trained together for years. A cry from downstairs broke the tension. Amara, waking from nightmares. They moved simultaneously. A strange dance of co-parenting neither had planned. Found their daughter sobbing in terror, reaching for both of them. Both. Amara whimpered in broken English. Need both. So they stayed. Ife singing softly in Zulu, ancient lullabies her mother had taught her. Téju humming Korean melodies his own mother had once sung before the clan hardened her into stone. Their voices twined together, African and Asian, past and present, 2 broken people trying to keep one innocent child safe. Amara's breathing finally steadied. Slept. Téju looked at Ife across their daughter's sleeping form and saw not a desperate homeless woman, but a warrior who'd survived hell to protect her child. His child. Their child. We're going to find out who killed your father, he said quietly. And we're going to make them pay. Even if it's someone in your clan. Especially then. Han Ji-wook's sharp knock interrupted before Ife could respond. He entered, face ashen, laptop in shaking hands. You need to see this. Now. The financial records filled the screen. A massive payment from Baekdu clan account to a Hong Kong mercenary group. Dated exactly 1 week before Kwame Mbeki's assassination. But it was the authorization signature that made Téju's world implode. Digital signature. Encrypted. Authenticated. Belonging to someone with highest level clan access. The signature belonged to matriarch Yom Hyjin. His grandmother had ordered the hit that killed Ife's father. That destroyed her family. That left his daughter homeless and hunted for 3 years. The woman who'd called Amara, that mixed thing, had created the circumstances that almost killed her. Téju stared at the screen, his face carved from ice, while inside his chest something fundamental cracked. The clan he'd bled for. The legacy he'd killed to preserve. Built on the corpse of his daughter's grandfather. Téju. Ife's voice seemed to come from very far away. What is it? He turned to face her, and in his eyes she saw the birth of something terrible. A man choosing between the empire that made him and the family that broke him. My grandmother, he said, his voice empty of everything human. She ordered your father's death. And in that moment, Yom Téju declared war on his own blood. The ancestral shrine room smelled of incense and old sins. Téju found his grandmother there at dawn, kneeling before tablets that bore the names of 4 generations of Yom patriarchs. She didn't turn when he entered, but her spine stiffened. Tell me you didn't order Kwame Mbeki's assassination. The matriarch's silence was answer enough. When she finally stood, turning to face him, her expression held no shame. Only calculation. I did what was necessary to protect this clan. Necessary. Téju's voice dropped to something deadly. He was our partner. 20 years of business. And his daughter, that woman you called filth, is Amara's mother. I didn't know about the woman or the child. That's an unfortunate complication. Unfortunate. He stepped closer. You're not sorry at all. Sorry doesn't build empires. The matriarch lifted her chin. Difficult decisions do. Kwame Mbeki knew too much. He was becoming a liability, threatening to expose operations if we didn't increase his percentage. He had to be eliminated. You'll understand when you're truly in power. I'll never understand murdering partners for profit. Then you'll never be the leader this clan needs. Han Ji-wook's interruption was perfectly timed. Sir, there's something else. The authorization wasn't just hers. He pulled up the file. Sang-woo's signature is also on the payment approval. The confrontation with his cousin happened in Sang-woo's office. All glass and steel, and expensive art purchased with blood money. Sang-woo's charming smile never wavered. I was following grandmother's orders. She said Kwame was a threat. I trusted her judgment. Liar. Han Ji-wook threw down a stack of financial records. You approached her first, convinced her Kwame needed elimination, and then you renegotiated his diamond routes, pocketed the difference. 3 years of embezzlement. Millions of won. Sang-woo's smile finally cracked. Prove it. Already did. Téju's voice was ice. And we found your communications with Wang Jiam's syndicate. You've been selling clan information to our rivals. The mask shattered completely. Sang-woo's face twisted into something ugly. You think you're so noble? You abandoned the clan for 3 years to chase some African girl. I've been holding this empire together while you played tourist. I deserve. You murdered Ife's father for money. Téju moved with lethal grace. And now you're trying to destroy everything so you can sell the pieces. The clan is dying anyway. Might as well profit from the corpse. When Ife learned the truth, that her father had died not for power or revenge, but for simple greed, something broke in her. She found the matriarch in the garden, lunged with a scream of pure rage. Téju caught her before she could reach the old woman. Not like this, he said against her ear as she fought him. They'll kill you and take Amara. They took everything. Ife's sobs were raw, torn from somewhere deep. My father, my family, my life. For what? Money. He held her as she broke. This warrior woman who'd survived 3 years of hell, finally allowing herself to grieve. When the storm passed, she looked up at him with devastated eyes. They murdered him for profit. I know. I want them dead. They will be. His voice was a promise carved in stone. But we do it right. We expose them, destroy them legally within clan structure. They'll lose everything before they die. How? The succession vote. 1 month away. If we can prove Sang-woo's treason and the matriarch's conspiracy, the clan will turn on them. Then they're ours. Later, in his study, Ife watched him plan. The cold Mafia boss was back, calculating moves like chess pieces. But when Amara toddled in, demanding Appa up, his face transformed. My family killed your father, Téju said quietly as he lifted his daughter. I can't undo that. But I can make sure Amara grows up in a world where people like Sang-woo don't win. Ife moved closer. I came here hating you, hating your clan. But you're not them. She touched his face. Amara deserves to know her father. The real you, not the monster they created. The kiss was inevitable. 3 years of lost time, current danger, grief and rage, and something desperately like hope. It burned between them, complicated and necessary. 2 damaged people finding unexpected connection in the wreckage of their families. When they pulled apart, Ife was breathless. That was a mistake, Téju said. Liar. He smiled despite everything. A necessary mistake. The planning session lasted hours, splitting the clan, gathering evidence, preparing for the succession vote. Amara played with blocks nearby, innocent of the war being waged for her future. Then a servant entered with a package. Plain brown paper. No return address. Téju opened it. Inside, a child's shoe. Tiny. Pink. Exactly Amara's size. And a note in neat Korean script. She won't need both pairs where she's going. Ife's face drained of blood. She grabbed Amara, pulling their daughter close. Téju read the note again, and everyone in the room watched his expression transform from human to something primordial and terrifying. The message was explicit, calculated, personal. Someone wasn't just targeting them politically. Someone was hunting their child. And they were close enough to know what size shoes Amara wore. Jiwook. Taeju's voice was empty of everything except murderous intent. Full compound lockdown. No one in or out without my personal authorization. Find who delivered this package. Sir. Find them. And when you do, bring them to me alive. I have questions. Ife was shaking, clutching Amara, who was blissfully unaware of the threat. They know what she wears. They've been watching her. I know. They could get to her at any time. Not while I'm breathing. Téju pulled them both against him. His daughter, what was Ife now? Partner? Ally? Something more dangerous than either? This is war, Ife whispered. This has always been war. He looked down at Amara's innocent face. But now they've made it personal. The shoe sat on his desk. A small, terrible promise. Someone in the clan, someone close enough to access Amara's room, had sent a death threat wrapped in pink cotton. And Yom Téju was going to burn his entire world down to find them. The compound transformed into a war fortress overnight. Téju unleashed every resource at his disposal. Intelligence networks across 3 continents, surveillance technology that would make governments jealous, and interrogation methods that made hardened criminals break. The cold Mafia boss who'd once killed without feeling was back. But this time, he was fighting for something beyond power. He was fighting for his daughter's life. Han Ji-wook's report was grim. 3 groups want them dead. African mercenaries, hired by Kwame's original enemies. Sang-woo's faction, eliminating Amara clears his path to succession. And Wang Jiam's syndicate, using the chaos to strike while we're divided. Then we split our forces. Maximum security on Ife and Amara. Hunt teams for each threat. And I want every piece of evidence on Sang-woo compiled for the succession vote. Ife found him in the training room at dawn, working through forms that were more violence than art. I'm not hiding while you fight my battles. This isn't your fight. Like hell it isn't. She stepped onto the mat, her stance perfect. I didn't survive 3 years by cowering. I fight. So they trained together, his Korean martial arts meeting her Krav Maga and whatever brutal efficiency her father had taught her. Amara watched from a corner, playing with blocks, innocent in the center of the coming storm. When they moved in sync, anticipating each other's strikes, finishing combinations like they'd trained together for years, Ife laughed breathlessly. We're good at this. We should have done this 3 years ago. Téju caught her wrist mid-strike, held it. I should have come back. Why didn't you? The question she'd been holding for 3 years. So he told her. His father's assassination attempt. The emergency that called him home. The decision to cut all ties because anyone connected to him became a target. I was protecting you, he said. You made that choice for both of us. I should have had a say. You're right. I was a coward. I'm trying not to be one now. The ambush came at a supposedly secret location, a clan-owned restaurant where Téju had taken them for a rare moment of normalcy. African mercenaries hit hard and fast. Gunfire erupted. Civilians screamed. Téju and Ife moved as one, shielding Amara while returning fire with lethal precision. Ife fought like a demon, her father's daughter, trained since childhood to survive wars. They carved an escape route through blood and chaos, both taking wounds, but neither stopping until Amara was safe. Later, in a safe house, they tended each other's injuries. Amara clung to both of them, crying, Mama hurt? Appa hurt. We're okay, little star, Ife whispered. We're okay. But they weren't. Han Ji-wook's investigation traced the mercenaries' payment to an offshore account, one that linked directly to Sang-woo's embezzlement network. He's funding all three groups, Ji-wook said, his face grave. Multi-front attack. If you die defending them, he's the hero who warned you. If they die, you're broken. Either way, he wins succession. That night, after putting Amara to sleep, Téju stood by her crib and whispered promises in Korean. You'll never live on the streets again. Never know hunger, fear, or abandonment. I failed you once. Never again. Ife heard from the doorway, tears streaming down her face. Later, in the darkness of his room, she came to him. Not just passion, though there was that 3 years of lost time burning between them, but also reconnection, commitment, two damaged people choosing each other despite everything trying to tear them apart. I thought I hated you, she whispered against his skin, for leaving, for not being there. But watching you with her, you're trying to be the father she deserves. I'm trying to be the man you deserve. Then don't leave again. Never. The matriarch appeared in Ife's path 2 days later, a rare private moment. She studied Amara with an expression Ife couldn't read. That child, she has Yom blood. Strong blood. You tried to have her killed. No. The matriarch's voice was sharp. Sang-woo did. I wanted her gone. Not dead. There's a difference. Is there? He's using me. Using my fear of change to destroy everything I've built. I'm beginning to see that now. Before Ife could respond, the old woman walked away, leaving questions hanging in the air. Elder No, the clan's ancient fortune teller, requested an audience with Téju on the 7th day. In his chamber filled with incense and old scrolls, the elder unrolled a document 4 centuries old. When the clan faces destruction from within, a child of 2 bloods will appear, marked by the stars found in darkness. She will unite what was divided and bring fire to the old ways. What does this mean? Amara has a birthmark on her shoulder, yes? Téju's blood went cold. Yes. Why? Elder No laid out a constellation map, an ancient star pattern used in Korean prophecy. The birthmark Téju had noticed on his daughter's shoulder matched it exactly, a rare configuration that appeared once in a millennium. She's not a threat to the clan. The old man's eyes were bright with something like wonder. She's its salvation, the child of prophecy, and they're trying to kill her. Téju stared at the map, at his daughter's birthmark traced in ancient ink, and felt the weight of destiny settle on his shoulders like a blade. If Amara was prophesied to save the clan, then everyone trying to kill her was fighting fate itself. And Yom Téju would burn heaven and earth to make sure fate won. Elder No's chamber became a war room. The ancient prophecy scroll lay spread across the table, Amara's constellation birthmark glowing in the candlelight like destiny itself. Téju, Ife, and Han Ji-wook studied it with the intensity of generals planning a siege. Traditional clan members respect prophecy above all else, Téju said, his voice cold and calculating. If we prove Amara is the prophesied child, resistance crumbles. But first, we eliminate the immediate threats. 3 operations, Han Ji-wook confirmed. Simultaneous strikes. Operation Alpha moved swift and silent. Téju contacted Kwame's former allies in South Africa. Men who remembered the partnership, who owed them Becky name loyalty. Ife revealed her own network, connections she'd kept hidden even from him. Together, they sent a message to the African mercenaries: leave Korea, or die on foreign soil. Most chose survival. Those who didn't were eliminated by a combined Korean-African hit squad that moved like ghosts through Seoul's shadows. Operation Beta was surgical precision. Han Ji-wook leaked false intelligence about secret account numbers directly to Sang-woo's network. When Sang-woo took the bait and accessed the encrypted file, surveillance software captured everything: 3 years of embezzlement, communications with Wang Jiam's syndicate, payment authorizations for assassinations. The complete financial trail of his treachery, documented and irrefutable. Operation Gamma required balls of steel. Téju walked into Wang Jiam territory alone, sitting across from Kim Dae-young, the rival syndicate's boss. Sang-woo's been paying you with stolen clan money, Téju said, sliding documents across the table. When I take full leadership, that arrangement ends. But I'm offering something better: international expansion through African diamond networks. Real profit, not desperate bribes. Kim Dae-young studied the proposal with a businessman's cold calculation. You're either brave or suicidal, walking in here. I'm practical. You want money. I'm offering more than Sang-woo ever could. 24 hours later, Wang Jiam syndicate withdrew all support from Sang-woo. That evening, Téju found Ife watching Amara sleep. When this is over, will you stay? Not for Amara's sake, for yourself? I've been running for 3 years. I'm tired of running. She turned to face him. But I won't stay as your kept woman. Then stay as my equal. Co-lead this clan with me. Bring your father's network into alliance. Her eyes widened. You'd give me real power? I'd share it. That's stronger. She kissed him then, fierce and claiming. We do this right. No more secrets. But secrets had a way of surfacing. Han Ji-wook's discovery shattered everything. Sealed adoption records from 40 years ago. The matriarch had given birth to an illegitimate biracial son, forced to abandon him to preserve family honor. That baby, adopted by a South African family, grew up to be Kwame Becky. When confronted, the matriarch collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. Sang-woo told me Kwame discovered the connection, that he'd use it for blackmail. I thought I was protecting the clan. I killed my own son for nothing. Ife stood frozen, processing the impossible truth. Amara wasn't just Téju's daughter. She was the matriarch's biological granddaughter. The mixed blood she'd rejected was her own legacy. I can never undo what I've done, the old woman whispered. But I can make sure his granddaughter inherits what should have been his. 3 days before the succession ceremony, Elder No performed the blessing ritual. Clan members gathered, witnessing Amara marked as the prophesied child. Everything was in place, evidence compiled, allies secured, prophecy revealed. Then Sang-woo made his final move. The ransom video showed Amara crying, terrified, in some dark room. Sang-woo's voice was cold triumph. Succession ceremony is cancelled. Téju will publicly abdicate, or the child dies. Ife will surrender herself to me, or the child dies. You have 24 hours. The screen went black. Ife's scream tore through the compound, and Téju's face transformed into something absolutely terrifying. The monster was back, but this time, he was protecting family. Téju's fist went through the wall. Then another, and another. Furniture overturned, glass shattered, primal rage erupting from a man who'd spent 32 years keeping everything locked inside. We'll find her, Han Ji-wook said, but his voice was hollow. He took my daughter. Téju's voice was barely human. He's dead. I don't care about succession, about the clan, about anything. I'm going to tear the city apart until I find her. Ife grabbed his bloodied hands, forced him to look at her. And if we fail, if we storm in and he kills her, we need to be smart. Smart meant swallowing pride. Smart meant appearing to break. They recorded the compliance video with tears that weren't entirely fake. Téju's false abdication. I was wrong to prioritize outsiders over clan. I stepped down. Ife's surrender. I'll turn myself in. Just don't hurt my daughter. Sang-woo responded with coordinates. An abandoned factory outside Seoul. Come alone. Both of you. If I see any clan members, she dies. But Han Ji-wook's strike team was already moving into position. Shadows within shadows. The factory reeked of oil and decay. Téju and Ife entered with hands raised, visibly unarmed. Sang-woo stood in the center like a grotesque king. Amara sobbing in his arms, gun pressed to her temple. You thought you were so smart, Téju. Sang-woo's smile was victory and madness. But you're weak. Love made you weak. Please. Téju dropped to his knees, and the humiliation was real, raw. Please. She's just a baby. Kill me instead, Ife begged. Just let her go. Oh, I'll kill you both. But I want you to watch her die first. Téju's eyes met Ife's. A fraction of a second. The signal embedded in his next words, then do what you came here to do. Flashbangs. Smoke. Chaos erupting like hell's doors opening. Téju and Ife moved as one. Hidden weapons appearing from nowhere. Years of separate survival colliding into perfect synchronization. She fought toward Amara with a mother's desperate fury. He pursued Sang-woo with a killer's cold precision. The hand-to-hand combat was brutal, efficient. Téju broke bones methodically, paying back every terror Sang-woo had inflicted on his daughter. Then Sang-woo revealed the dead man's switch. The bomb. If I die, we all die. Mexican standoff. Téju's blade at Sang-woo's throat. One move ends it and kills everyone. Ife, shielding Amara, made the impossible shot. The mechanism exploded in Sang-woo's hand, bomb disabled. Téju didn't make it quick. Couldn't. For every tear his daughter cried, he made Sang-woo suffer. Aftermath was reunion, 3 bodies collapsing together. Amara between them, all of them crying. Ife had a bullet wound in her shoulder. Téju's ribs were cracked, face bloodied. But Amara was alive. Appa, she kept saying. Appa, Appa, Appa. First time Téju cried in 20 years. 12 hours later, the matriarch arrived with clan heirlooms, ancient pieces that had belonged to Kwame, her murdered son. These are Amara's birthright. Elder No performed protection rituals. Ife dressed in traditional African royal garments, gold and crimson honoring her father's legacy. Téju wore formal clan attire, the dragon tattoos on his arms visible, symbolic. 3 years ago you left me alone, Ife said, adjusting his collar with tender hands. Tomorrow we stand together. 3 years ago I was a coward. Tomorrow I'm a father. And a husband, if you'll have me. Let's save the wedding for after we survive the succession ceremony. Dawn broke cold and unforgiving. The ancestral hall waited like a judgment chamber. Hundreds of clan members inside. Some supportive, some hostile, most uncertain. Han Ji-wook carried 3 years of evidence in a single briefcase. Everything depended on what happened in the next hour. Elder No touched Amara's head in blessing. Whatever happens in there, remember, you're not fighting for power. You're fighting for her. Téju looked at his daughter in her fusion of Korean and African traditional dress, at Ife standing beside him like a warrior queen, and felt something like peace. Then we've already won. The massive doors closed behind them with the finality of fate. Inside, hundreds of eyes turned toward them, judging, calculating, deciding whether this family would live or die. The final battle had begun. The ancestral hall held its breath. Hundreds of faces, stern elders, ambitious lieutenants, uncertain allies, watched as Téju, Ife, and Amara walked the gauntlet to the center. The matriarch sat in her throne-like chair, expression carved from stone. Traditional protocol demanded each candidate present their case, but Sang-woo's seat remained conspicuously empty. Where is Yom Sang-woo? Demanded Elder Park, leader of the traditionalist faction. Téju's voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. Yom Sang-woo will not be presenting. He's dead, killed while attempting to murder my daughter. The room exploded. Accusations flew. Murder to eliminate a rival. execution without trial, betrayal of clan law. Sang-woo's remaining supporters demanded Téju be stripped of his position, possibly executed. Han Ji-wook stepped forward with a briefcase that contained 3 years of damnation. We have evidence. All of it. The presentation was systematic, devastating. 300 million won embezzled. Conspiracy with Wang Jiam syndicate. Selling clan secrets for personal profit. Payment authorizations for Kwame Mbeki's assassination. Financial trails connecting Sang-woo to every threat against Ife and Amara. Communications planning the kidnapping. Recorded confessions from captured mercenaries. And finally, video evidence, Sang-woo holding a gun to a crying child's head. Silence fell like a shroud. Sang-woo's faction collapsed. Supporters scrambling to distance themselves from a traitor's legacy. But resistance remained. Elder Park rose, voice trembling with righteous fury. Prophecy or not, she's mixed blood. This breaks centuries of tradition. Elder No shuffled forward, ancient scrolls in weathered hands. He revealed the prophecy in full. 400 years of waiting for the child of 2 bloods, marked by stars found in darkness. Then he unveiled Amara's shoulder, the birthmark matching the constellation exactly. The gods don't care about your traditions, the old fortune teller said quietly. They marked this child for leadership. And the woman? Elder Park gestured dismissively at Ife. She's not clan, not Korean, not one of us. Téju's smile was sharp as broken glass. You're right. She's not one of us. She's better. Ife stepped forward, and every eye tracked her movement. She spoke in a blend of Korean and English, Han Ji-wook translating smoothly, telling her full story. Kwame Mbeki's partnership with Baekdu, his murder by internal conspiracy, her years protecting Téju's daughter alone. I didn't choose this, she said, voice steady as steel. But I'm here, and I'm not leaving. Then she revealed her strategic value. Diamond networks spanning 3 continents, smuggling routes, political connections. She proposed the Baekdu-Mbeki alliance, a restructured empire that would dominate both Asian and African operations. Your choice, she finished. Stay isolated and die slowly, or partner with me and build an international power. The businessmen saw profit. The traditionalists saw sacrilege. Then the matriarch stood. The room fell silent. I kill my son. Her voice cracked like ancient ice breaking. Kwame Mbeki was my biological child. I ordered his death without knowing. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Even those who knew fragments of the story reeled from the complete truth. I let tradition destroy my family. I gave up my child 40 years ago because he was mixed. I killed him 3 years ago because I believed lies. I rejected his granddaughter because she reminded me of my shame. She turned to Amara, tears streaming down weathered cheeks. You are my blood, true Yon blood, and you are the future I tried to erase. She removed the clan matriarch pendant, walked to Ife, and placed it around her neck. Ife Mbeki, daughter of Kwame, mother of Amara. You are clan now. Led them well. The vote was called. Tension stretched like wire about to snap. Hands raised slowly, painfully. The count was close, traditionalists resisting to the bitter end. But 2/3 voted yes. Téju became clan head. Ife co-leader. Amara, designated heir. The vows were taken. The prophecy fulfilled. Elder No declared Amara the child of 2 bloods, officially, and even the resistors bowed to clan law. But as celebrations began, as alliances were formalized and power restructured, one question lingered in the air like smoke. In a world where tradition just died and revolution was born, how many enemies would rise from the ashes to challenge this new empire? Wait, you think this is where their story ends? The Baekdu-Mbeki alliance just made powerful enemies across 3 continents. Subscribe now to find out who comes for revenge, what secrets Amara discovers about her grandfather Kwame, and whether Téju and Ife's empire can survive what's coming next. Hit that like button if you're obsessed with Afro-Korean Mafia romance. Comment Amara if you want her sequel story.